Kia ora tātou katoa. Michael Leunig has plied his cartooning and creative trade for decades, chiefly with the Melbourne Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. The purpose of a newspaper cartoon is multifarious. They're meant to make you smile, make you think, also to confront you, and sometimes to comfort you. Leunig, in his cartooning spaces, would occasionally write prayers, which in itself is confrontational in a secular newspaper in a secular society. These were prayers, many of which pop up from time to time in St. Luke's liturgies. They remind us that spirituality is not just for the religious, but as a way of seeing and appreciating the beauty, mystery, and wonder of the messy ordinary all around. In the preface of his wee book, Common Prayer, collection of these prayers, he offers an image of prayer, a person kneeling in front of a duck. It's a ridiculous image of prayer. But in its ridiculousness, like a king of glory riding on a donkey, it whispers to us seditiously. It whispers humility, being thought of as a fool. It whispers upside down, downside up, wisdom. Listening to a duck who can't speak English. It whispers listening to the little, the insignificant ones. The person kneels not before the high, the mighty, those with power, but before the lowly, weak, and those who are seemingly without anything, which allegedly gives prestige, purpose, and profit. As Leunig says, everyone knows a proud and upright man, woman, does not and cannot talk with a duck. The duck represents nature, beauty, the non-rational, the mysterious, unsayable, which of course is also within us. We call it the soul. The soul, our soul, though is often buried, covered over, underneath rational layers of what is sayable, explainable, useful, expected. So in a sense, a nonsense. The person kneeling before the duck is a person searching for their soul. What does it profit a man or a woman to gain the whole world and to lose his or her own soul? Ask the early Jesus communities. And for those of us raised on gain upon gain, on self upon self, the soul does need to be searched for. When you kneel before the duck, you get closer to the duck. Like when your cat rubs your head with its head, or your dog with its head. Head to head is close, personal. Close enough to smell, feel, sense each other's body, and maybe soul. This search, this humble kneeling before the little and weak, which any rational person would consider nonsense, seeds and breeds small things, like pausing to notice, like pausing to thank, like pausing to wonder, like, what is our duty of care? Above all, this image of kneeling before a duck says that prayer is something we do. It's not primarily something we say or believe Or, heaven help us, a petition to a MasterCard God who's got the whole world in his sick hands? No, prayer is something primarily we do, a duty of care, to use those old words. Care for the earth, its non-human and human communities, its balance, its vulnerabilities, all of which shape our soul and to which our soul belongs. Kneeling in prayer has a history. When you knelt before a king, you were baring the back of your neck to the potential of a swinging sword, offering your life if the king chose to take it. Kneeling was then adopted for religious purposes, the supplicant offering their life to God the King. But when God is reimaged, reimagined, restored, away from masters and kings, as the early Jesus groups tried to do, then kneeling doesn't cut it. And kneeling before a duck flips, discombobulates this whole petitioning God thing. Instead, we kneel to listen to the little ones unearthed in order to find, to regain, not for gain, our very soul. Here's a poem about such listening by Macari Greenslade. Listen. God is small today, on a chair in the corner, eyes full of watch. Hands at lap rest, all a wonder at our prayer and our politics. Do the little ones have enough to eat and hold and love? Do the dogs need a walk in what it's left of Eden's shell? These thoughts I begin with are by way of introduction to the image of this day, Palm Sunday. Jesus riding into Jerusalem on a donkey and crowds waving palms and singing praise. Firstly, in case we fall into the literalism that lawyers seem to love and poets think is death, there was never an actual factual donkey ride or a triumphal entry of any kind. Instead, this is an episode constructed by the early communities of Jesus after his death, as they sought to make meaning of his life and death. They took verses like Zechariah 9:9, "Lo, your king comes to you, triumphant, humble and riding on a donkey," which is about the Messiah rather than any king, which is to say the anointed, the Christ. And they wove such verses, the early communities, into a narrative. It's a well-known Jewish process called midrash. They were trying to answer the question of why did the anointed die? And the answer had to be searched for and told in stories about how he lived. Secondly, donkeys. They get mixed press. G.K. Chesterton has his donkey saying, "The tattered outlaw of the earth, of ancient crooked will, starve, scourge, deride me. I am done. I keep my secret still." And Chesterton, following the likes of Shakespeare, who fashioned the term ass as an insult, points to the abuse they often got and get, and he puns the word dumb. Greek literature often had a negative view of donkeys. In the works of Homer, Aesop, Apuleius, they are portrayed as stupid, stubborn, at best servile. Not beautiful and powerful like a horse. This negative view had a large influence in later cultures, including medieval and Renaissance Europe. Hebrew literature, on the other hand, had a more positive view. They were work animals rather than war animals, horses being the war animals. Importantly, they show up in biblical stories where humans need to change their focus or direction, and the donkey shows the way. Like the tale of that abusive ass called Balaam. The donkey in the story the Balaam story, could see God's messenger was an angel with a sword, whereas Balaam couldn't. Rather than follow Balaam's directives, the donkey does what donkey thinks best, avoiding the divine threat and taking the peace-loving, let's get out of here option. This happens 3 times. 3 times Balaam is saved from the sword-wielding angel, and 3 times donkey is hit and abused. Until donkey speaks. I wonder whether donkey sounded like Eddie Murphy. You can ask why God in this tale didn't reveal God's self to Balaam earlier and save poor donkey from at least a couple of beatings. But such lawyer thoughts would kind of sink the story. I like what the donkey says. Reminding Balaam of its loyalty, the donkey says in effect, "Would I beat you? Would I treat you like this if our roles were reversed? How about a little trust here, mate?" Now when we come to Palm Sunday, this donkey and Balaam story is important. In a time when most people in the Jewish Jesus groups, that is to say all the Jesus groups, couldn't read, their oral cultural reference library were the writings and stories of Hebrew literature. So when we say donkey, we might think Don Quixote, Anzac, or Shrek. They would think Balaam's ass. So I invite you today to think about Palm Sunday with a Balaam overlay. Rather imagine the story is about Jesus being hailed and honored as a king of glory, as hollow as that hailing and honoring would prove to be. Reimagine the story is about the relationship between Jesus and a loyal, peace-loving animal who had divine insight. A relationship up close, personal, soul-nurturing. Is the donkey just a symbolic accessory to this Palm Sunday tale? The real point being the palms and the proclamation of Jesus' messiahship? Or is the real point that we continue to miss the point? That it's not about the humble Jesus riding on a lowly servile donkey instead of a top or powerful warhorse. A humble Jesus critiquing power with his upside-down spirituality. Rather, it's about getting down with all the donkeys of the world, listening to their wisdom, their insights into the divine, and ignoring the baying of praising fickle crowds. If you want to find your soul, get off your high horse. Get down, get grounded with those who are regularly ignored or derided or abused, who are seen as accessories, at best servants, but never teachers. Listen to the small gods in the corners, whose eyes are full of watch. Listen for the whisper, and learn and heed and seed its wisdom.